Hi, Dan Homann. My last devotional was about fully trusting God. And I was examining how much I rely on myself versus trusting God for all things first. Am I stumbling around in the dark, or am I turning to God and trusting Him to lead me? Well, I came across a devotional that talked about Jacob and his tendencies to rely on himself instead of trusting and obeying God. Genesis 35, 1 through 3. Then God said to Jacob, "Go up to Bethel and settle there, and build an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau." So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, "Get rid of the foreign gods you have with you, and purify yourselves, and change your clothes. Then come, let us go to Bethel, where I will build an altar to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and has been with me wherever I have gone." In Genesis 31, we see Jacob returning to Bethel. He'd spent 20 tough years away from home waiting for his brother Esau's anger to cool. You remember Jacob? He had become the target of Esau's wrath because he had cheated Esau of certain family rights and blessings. See Genesis chapters 25 through 27 for that story. God had previously promised that Esau would serve Jacob, so Jacob didn't have to manipulate the blessing from Esau. He could have trusted and waited on God to fulfill the promise in his own time and way. Near the beginning of his journey away from home, Jacob stopped to camp for the night. During the night, God gave Jacob the well-known Jacob's ladder dream. In the dream, God declares his sovereign purpose for Jacob. God emphatically stated that he would be with Jacob, keep him, bless him, and give him all the land that he was on, and eventually bring him back to his homeland. What grace! God extends his grace to us in the same way. We fail him so often with our half-hearted faith and obedience, but he is constantly faithful to his promises. Although Jacob shows some faith by renaming the place Bethel, he hedges by vowing, "If God will be with me and keep me and give me and bring me back safely, then the Lord will be my God." Chapter 28, verses 20 and 21. Does this sound familiar? What kind of trust and obedience is this? God had stated in no uncertain terms his promise to Jacob, and all Jacob had to do was trust God to accomplish them. Yet Jacob had the audacity to basically say, "Show me first, then I'll call you my God," with an if type of faith and obedience. How often do we do something similar and selfishly bargain with God? "If you help me pass this exam, God, I will give you more time reading your Bible. If you let me look good in this event, Lord, I'll witness for you." It goes on and on. In Genesis 31, God tells Jacob to go back to Bethel. In obedience to God's command, Jacob left and traveled towards Bethel and Esau. Jacob had improved in his trust and obedience. In Genesis 32, on the eve of the reconciliation with Esau, Jacob had a wrestling match with the angel of God. Here Jacob learned that he must be completely broken of self and rely fully on God for blessing. After such an experience with God, we would be inclined to close the story of Jacob by saying, "And Jacob was reconciled to his brother Esau and lived happily ever after and served the Lord wholeheartedly in godly trust and obedience." But the Bible doesn't give us such fairy tale endings, because the Bible tells the life stories of real people. Jacob had certainly learned and matured and grown in faith and obedience, but all this was no guarantee that he would never fail in faith again. And that's exactly what we see in Genesis 33. After his reconciliation with Esau, Jacob did not continue on his way back to Bethel in full obedience to the Lord's command. Instead, he went in a different direction and settled in Succoth. God had told Jacob to return home to his relatives and he would take care of him. There was no need to continue to fear Esau, but Jacob once again turned aside from the path of trust and obedience. He apparently decided to stay away from Bethel indefinitely since he built a house and barns in Sagoth. See chapter 33, verse 17. As a result, Jacob experienced more years of unhappiness and loss of blessing. Genesis 34 records the tragedy that took place in Jacob's family as a result of his not going back to Bethel. Jacob's daughter was abducted and raped, and his sons Levi and Simeon were liars and murderers. What a lesson for us. There's always fallout when faith and obedience come short, and it affects others besides ourselves. God has given us so many precepts and principles to guide our lives as growing Christians. God does not expect us to question or change or compromise His commands. He expects us to simply trust Him and obey Him. Jacob was finally ready to listen with both ears to God. In Genesis 35:1, God said to Jacob, "Go to Bethel and live there, and make an altar there to God." Jacob got the message. The connections with paganism were severed, and in full trust and obedience, Jacob came back to Bethel. Here he built an altar, and here God blessed him. If only Jacob had come back sooner. In 10 or 15 years, will you look back and say the same thing about your life? If only I had trusted and obeyed God more right from the start. God continued to work in Jacob's life, and God continues to work in ours. It's true that like Jacob, we may reap the consequences of our lack of faith and token obedience. But God is gracious and will complete the good work which He has begun in us. The fact that Jacob is included in the Hall of Faith in Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 21, is a ray of hope that we can learn to fully trust God and obey Him, and that we are not judged by all our past failings. God bless you.